So in this one, we're going to be setting up Bootstrap. Bootstrap is a front-end framework to make building web applications a lot easier and a lot faster. It's something we've used a lot, and if you want to know more about Bootstrap in particular, check out Try Django 1.8 because we go into more detail as how Bootstrap works. In this one, all we're going to do is implement it to make it work on our project itself. And if you want to see a full functioning Bootstrap project, let us know. We do have a more in-depth tutorial on codingforentrepreneurs.com, but we're happy to answer questions about Bootstrap and possibly even make a whole tutorial based on Bootstrap itself, based on what you guys say. Okay, so to do this, we're going to go to getbootstrap.com and we're going to go into getting started. And I'm going to be going off of the Bootstrap CDN stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this entire thing here. And we're going to go back into our base.html and I'm going to paste it below it just to see what's going on. First of all, we have our CSS stuff. So I'm going to put our CSS above our base CSS. So this is the Bootstrap CDN things right here. And then finally, the script itself, I'm going to put right before that last body tag right there. So if we save it and go back into our project, let's make sure the server is running. What we see already is it's already starting to look better. So the post itself, it's just kind of laid out just a little bit better for us because it's going off of the Bootstrap CDN stuff. So to make some changes to this, that's actually what we're going to end up doing because Bootstrap itself is not really that complicated. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this image itself. And the reason we see that it changed is because I used one of the Bootstrap classes for all of this stuff is container. So now let's actually make some changes to a lot of our templates. So we're going to jump into our post detail here. The post detail, let's take a look at one. This is it. Now, this is okay, but I just want to update it a little bit. And we'll say div class equals to column small 6 and column small offset 3. And we close off the div here. Refresh, it starts to go in the middle. We no longer need the title and as part of that. And then the timestamp, so I'll put the timestamp up here. I'm just gonna make it cleaned up a little bit. I don't need updated it or ID any longer. And now we've got our post that's actually coming through. Of course, we could have a lot more content in here, and we probably would. So if I were to put a lot more in here, we would probably want to see that. Go ahead and hit create post or update post really. So it's actually not showing it correctly. So I'm going to go and just say line breaks, add line breaks, the template filter for line breaks. That's a built-in thing. So now we see our line breaks actually coming through. So that looks a little bit more like a normal post would. So if we go back into our list, we want to see the list itself. This is cool. It's starting to look a little bit better, but the content itself is, well, it's not rendered very well. So let's go back in there and we'll go into post list. And now we have each object listing through. I'm going to get rid of those two links because we no longer need that. And I can still do line breaks. And I can also do truncate words or characters, so cars, and I'll say 30. So, or let's say 120. That's probably a little bit better. So it's going to truncate the characters after 120 on each one. And now that we've got this, let's go ahead and put it into its own div class. And I'm going to leave this title and get rid of is working. So inside of the for loop, we're going to do div class equals to column small 6. And I'm going to close this div off. And now we start seeing our posts being displayed just a little bit better. But this is not also that great. So let's actually go into Bootstrap and we'll go into our components here. And we're going to go to thumbnails, or excuse me, not thumbnails, but custom content thumbnails. So this is what we'll actually use. I'm going to go ahead and copy this entire thing here. And I'm going to paste it in right underneath this. And what I see is I have this column small 6. That's actually what I want to loop. So I'm going to put the row above the for loop. I'll explain that in just shortly. The thumbnail, we actually don't have an image, so I'm going to just comment that out for a second. Thumbnail label will be the title of the object as well as the link. So let's go ahead and cut that out and paste that here. The content itself is going to be the line break stuff. So the content. All right. And then we would have some buttons, but we might also want the timestamp here inside of the H3. So small. And I'm going to use something here called time sense. So this is a template filter called time sense. Okay, I don't need the ID or updated, and I don't need any of these other things. And then finally, with the buttons, I can just say view, and I will again put the absolute URL here, and I'm going to get rid of some of these other links, or the other button, basically. So now, if we go back in, we refresh, now we see our posts are starting to look a little bit more like what our posts probably would look like. But there's this little gap here because of the content that we see. So what we want to do is add something for every time it needs a new line break. And I'm also going to just keep this column small 6. So there's a template filter called cycle, and we'll see what this does in just a second. So I'm going to close out the div, and I'll make a new div class of row. Save that, refresh, and now what happened is after every 2 loops, it's going to add this new div class of row. So it's basically just creating a brand new row for us. So inspecting the element, we see in our container here, we have rows each time. So after every 2 iterations that come through in that for loop, it closes off the div and creates a new row. And that allows us to have multiple rows look exactly like they do here, which is really cool. But you could also add another thing in here, which is like div class, column small 12, close off that div, and then just put an HR here. And that gives us a nice little line in there. So there's a lot of things you can play around with making this look better. Another thing that I probably want to do, and that is div class equals to column small 8 and column small offset 2. Close that off. And that brings everything in a little bit. Oops, let's move that title in too. That brings everything in so like our content is actually coming through here in a way that we might want to see. Now, the ordering of this is not what we want. We actually want this in reverse order. And in fact, we probably want to have the posts just being one post after another, not 2 posts stacked together. So let's change this back to being 12, refresh in there. And now that kind of makes a lot more sense than it did. And this cycle no longer is necessary. It's literally no longer necessary. So we can just change this to being row and row. Then we're going to get rid of this, put an HR tag underneath it. Just wanted to show you about that cycle tag if you were curious as to why we didn't just do this from the get-go. So this is now our list of posts, and it's coming through kind of like what we would want to see from our post. You might also want to make it in the same format as the other one, right? As the post detail, which is column small 6 offset 3. So let's actually just go ahead and do that and keep kind of standard format coming through here. So if I click on that post, it actually brings me to that very similar feeling. And the time sense part is we would also want to add a go here. So 2 weeks and 6 days ago, and if we scroll down, 28 minutes ago is actually the thing that should be showing up first. So that's cool. We will change that. And then the create view, the form itself, not going to do a whole lot to the form, but in the form we can also do that offset. So div class column small offset in there. Close off that div, and we'll add a class of btn and btn default. And there we go. So now our form looks a little bit better, as well as all of our list stuff. So this is starting to come together as a blog, a little bit better of a blog. Of course, it's not quite done yet, so there's still some Django logic that we'll need to do. But that's all we're going to do as far as implementing Bootstrap types of things. If you have any questions on this, let us know. Otherwise, let's keep going.